I didn't actually plan on making this video today. This is something I bought from my daughter that I don't think I'm going to be using for the purpose of which I bought it, but I figured I'd still do a video about it. It's not a new case by any means. It's the Lee & Lee A4 H2O from Dan. There's also an Air version, I believe. So it's a collaboration effort between Lee & Lee and Dan Case. If you don't know what Dan Case is, they're one of the kind of the more creative folks when it comes to making SFF cases or actual true small form factor cases. So today we're going to kind of unbox, take a look, kind of a tour of what makes the H2O interesting, because you can fit an AIO in this and potentially an actually fairly decent size graphics card. So today we're going to kind of just talk about it, unbox it, look at it. I won't be doing a build in it today, but I think this might help some people because FFF is kind of on the rise once again. So let's get into it. Jawa is the #1 online gaming marketplace to buy and sell new and used gaming gear and get awesome custom PCs at amazing prices. Jawa's mission is to be the community where great gaming gear is sold at reasonable prices by putting the market in the hands of gamers by building the best place for you to discuss, buy, and sell your PC gear. Jawa is also proud of their GPU and CPU buying program, where Jawa will make you a direct offer on your used CPUs and GPUs to help immediately offset the cost of your new hardware. Simply click on the Get an Offer button and see an instant offer on your components. Jawa's buyer and seller protection policies ensure safe and reliable transactions, while verified sellers offer an increased buying experience through pre-vetted sellers so you can shop with peace of mind. To get started browsing amazing deals and to see all that Jawa has to offer from enthusiasts just like you, follow the sponsored link in the description below. To give you an idea of how small this is that Meshroom D case that we did the build in with the 5090, which actually is not in there at the moment. What the hell is the side panel? Because we had to take it out and do other testings and stuff. So as you can see in the Meshify, it's Meshify. It's because I think mesh, and I think of the fractal design mesh stuff. Anyway, this is the Meshroom D by Supt, which is such a weird brand. Anyway, ITX, right? You can fit a 240 in here. You actually fit a 280 in here, but it gets a little tight because you have to deal with the power supply, which is right behind it. Everything's a bit squished in here. But what makes this case so unique and fun to build in is the fact that every panel is mesh and you can easily get to every side of the build. But as you can see, SFF cases like this get pretty dense. And when everything's this densely packed, temperatures become a bit of a concern. Even when you have, two 140 millimeter intakes on the bottom, the 5090 was still getting up to nearly 80 C inside this case with the FE card. But anyway, to me, that's gonna be sort of the comparison, because this case is actually really, really light too. There's something I want to check here real quick. So I'm going to take my scale. I have a feeling the case and the packaging is lighter than a 5090 Founders Edition card is. So I just want to see. But what I like about this case is the fact that it's all aluminum construction. It's very elegant looking, lots of mesh. But the reason why it's not going to work for my daughter's build is I'm downsizing her system in terms of footprint, because she's going to be moving her PC back to her room, where she has a lot less room than she does now in terms of desk space. So I really kind of want to find a tower. And what I mean by a tower is like a vertical type of case. This is so light. A vertical type of case. That way the footprint is small, but the build is vertical. Now, of course, we've got the Corsair 2000D or whatever it's called, which is a small form factor build. I built in that a few times. But what it doesn't allow, ooh, this is pretty. This is like right up Phil's alley right here. What it doesn't have is a window, to be honest. And so I'm asking a tall order here for a vertical, small footprint, small form factor build with a window. Really, the only thing that comes to mind is the Evolve Shift 2, but that also doesn't have the greatest layout or thermals. Anyway, moving on, you can see here this has a very Dan case look to it. Media blasted and clear anodized aluminum panels on here. And I took out those screws. That should be popping off somehow. Oh, it goes outward. Very thin, very lightweight because of the aluminum construction. So let's see here real quick. What does this panel weigh? The reason why I'm weighing this stuff is this is the kind of things that people that are super into SFF builds care about, because usually SFF is about ultra portability. So the lighter you can make the chassis, the more easy it is to transport. So that side panel only weighs 238, 232, 230. I need a better scale. Anyway, about 240 grams. The entire thing weighs 2,904 grams. 2,920. Let's put that in perspective. Here's the Zotac 5090. 2,276. So the case is barely heavier than the graphics card. Now I don't know how well of a comparison it is because these are pretty beefy, heavy cards, but whatever. The reason why I want a window in her build is her room and the way that she designed it has a lot of earthy tones, a lot of wood tones. Her walls are green. She has lots of browns and tans, and she really wanted this sort of a foresty feel about her room, so it's just real comfortable and inviting. And so I want to do a case mod for her that sort of utilizes that. So I want to paint it green, and I want to use Noctua fans because they're brown and tan, and I want to paint the interior kind of a tan color. And I want to do like maybe like a little bit of a vine in there because she has like vines hanging from her bookshelves, and she has like fairy lights everywhere. It's actually like, it's really comfortable. In fact, sometimes I'll go in there just to find reasons to talk to her, like, hey, what are you doing? So I can sit down in her room and be like, this is really comfortable. As I go back into my office, which is a complete disaster right now. Yeah, so all the panels, as you can see, clip in with the little ball nubbins, as I like to call them. So there they are right there. You can see they just pop in there. The top panel does index and go one way. So you can see it's got this little locator tab right there. So the top panel is designed to only go a certain way. If you look at the top right here, you can see we do have a rail that will fit two 120 millimeter fans. So the AIO version here is basically intended to be a water-cooled version, and they give you enough room here with the power supply, which will mount right here, to potentially put an AIO. But here's the only problem when it comes to AIOs and small form factor cases like this, is they're so small, the amount of tubing that you're left with is often a problem. So the tubing is designed to fit in large cases. Typically they are intended to go from the top of the case to the CPU. But it would be kind of nice if AIO manufacturers maybe started offering, and I know it's easy for us to say, offer this, but they have to really balance the cost of having a bespoke part or something that is outside the standard manufacturing process. That costs more because it's lower yields and lower manufacturing quantities or minimum MOQs or minimum order quantities. The lower that number is, the higher the cost. So to have an AIO version or designed for SFF with shorter tubes and stuff would cost a whole lot more. Anyways, you can see here we do have a power supply extension cable. One thing to keep in mind about this though is it's fairly small gauge, as you can see. So if you were gonna try and throw like, say a 5090 in here, which truly requires a 1200 watt power supply, it's recommended, its minimum requirement's 1000 watt, it's recommended 1200. This guy will fit in here. But the issue here is that this cable's a bit small diameter, so you might have a big thick cable going to the back of the PC, but then it's stepping down to the small cable. So just keep that in mind. That's nothing you can really do about this, but it's something that in 2025 we actually have to talk about, because the thing is, you would have absolutely, positively in the past never fit a 4090 or a 3090 in this build, ever. In fact, let me get one and show you, because they are too fat. I feel like you'd kind of have to go with the 50 series if you're gonna try and put a 90 in there, only because that angled connector. Now the bottom does come off of this case, which I guess is kind of nice. Which gives you access to your cable and stuff right there. So because of that angled connector, that really fits well in there. Now this wasn't intended to be a video about how well does the Founders Edition card fit in here, but you know what? It fits pretty damn good. But remember, it's a flow-through design. So although it fits, it's not ideal, because not only do you have the riser cable right here blocking all those fins off, so does the motherboard. So that half of the card would have no airflow through it whatsoever. Now, this is where the 40 series actually would be good, because this exhausts out the back. And that's the solid part where the ITX board is. Now this would be blowing right into your power supply, but that at least has some effort or chance to go somewhere. Because if you were to put your power supply fan on the GPU side, although yes, you'd be putting some pretty warm air through your power supply, warm air flows better than no airflow. to be honest. And if you flip the power supply around, now that fan's gonna be blowing right into the power supply. So in terms of the DAN case, what is it, the A4H2O, Lee DAN case, not recommended for Founders cards as far as I'm concerned. They look nice in there, but they certainly do not, they certainly won't do you any favors in terms of the temperatures on them. So let me get this out of here. As for the card for her, I'm probably gonna be using a 4080. She's on a 3080 water cooled now. She does do, she has a 4K panel, so I do need to make sure I keep in mind, I can't go super low on the graphics card or anything. But I think, I was thinking about throwing a 4080 ProArt, to be honest, because that'll fit in like anything. That's like a standard size card. She wants to do live streams and stuff, so I want to get her, you know, nice solid NVEC encoder and whatnot. But anyway, there's that. So the top obviously can fit the AIO, as I said. It mounts onto this bracket right here, which is nice because then you can just drop the bracket back in after the fact, making it really technically sort of easy. Do I have a 240 I can grab to test? Because I am really concerned as I look at the top how much space there is or isn't to try and get the tubing from one side to the other to the CPU. Okay, so a new issue here. If I look at the specs of this case, remember you only have like 45 millimeters, I believe. We'll put it on the screen right here if I'm wrong, but between the clearance of the side panel for your CPU cooler, the height of certain AIOs might become a problem. So this is our light loop from Be Quiet. And as you can see, it's got this big, you know, LED thing on top. And if I line this up about where the motherboard and the socket would be, it will not allow the side panel to close. That would mark the first time I've ever seen a case where the AIO itself won't clear, because AIOs are typically what people use when clearance is a problem. So that is the light loop. That unfortunately isn't going to work. So I have a couple other AIOs I can grab, but if they've got a really tall pump top on there, like an LCD screen or anything like that, they may not clear the side panel. So I just crudely mocked up the, what is this, the MPH from Fantex. It's kind of an old AIO. That'll have no problem clearing. It does have like an RGB thing that like attaches to the top via magnets, but it's also pretty short. But these are 30 mil fans. So again, AIOs are starting to become a little non-standard these days, where they're not 30 mil rads with 25 mil fans. It's 30 mil rads sometimes with a 30 mil fan. So it's a 60 millimeters, plus you have to deal with the tubes, right? So that's extra distance there you gotta deal with. Or you've got like the Arctic stuff, which has like a 48 millimeter fan or radiator or whatever that is, plus 25, and some to put different fans on there. It could be 28 mil, 30 mil. So now you're getting fatter and fatter. So we just kind of see though, no, it still hits.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a fan thickness problem, because it's the fans are hitting that centerpiece right there before we get this guy mounted all the way down. Okay, so 30 mil fans, no go. Let me grab two different fans. Now, to be fair, the manual does state 55 millimeters is the clearance you have on top, which is a 30 mil rad and 25 mil fans, which is what we have right here. And you have to run this kind of a very specific way. You can't go this way with the tubes and down to the CPU, because there's still not enough clearance under here for that cross brace I showed you. Now, because this pump top is small enough, I can route this through right here without having to take the PSU bracket off. But if your pump won't fit through there, then taking the PSU bracket off is how you would make that clear. Let's just sort of route this that way, I guess. So that should theoretically now just drop in. Okay.
Hey.
So,
math, numbers.
I'm really not a fan of the fact that that is the only cooling that is in here, is coming through the AIO. So you can expect your CPU temps to be greatly affected by GPU. Now, this is kind of nice that this is a removable shroud though, because it means you can get your PSU mounted to it and get your cables and stuff on there and sort of managed as you put it back in. And then obviously make sure it's not squishing up against your graphics card in some way. So, I mean, the DAN case, the Lee DAN A4 H2O, yes, it can fit AIO in there, with many asterisks. Is that how you say it? Asterisks?
Asterisks. Asterisk.
caveats, many caveats. So it has to be a very standard 240 AIO. And because you only have 55 millimeters of CPU cooler height, you could end up going with like the really small, like the really low Noctua coolers. I forget the model numbers. There's a couple companies that make very low profile coolers, but the max TDP you're gonna be stuck with on those is up to 150 watt. So that can handle like a 9800X3D, 7800X3D, 7700X, stuff like that. But you start going up into 180 watt plus territory, now you're gonna really push the limits of that CPU cooler. And that's where you would probably just wanna get the non-H2O version, which has a little bit more of the air cooler kind of in mind. But again, it's not, the overall dimensions of the case don't change much. So anyway, this would be neat. It just, I feel like it needs more than just exhaust, like positive pressure. I would prefer positive pressure, at least to assist with this. All right, I mean, I think that's kind of all there is to talk about. Oh, I got thermal paste. I got Kingpin paste on the riser. Oh yeah, it is a Gen 4 riser. So if you're running a 50 series card, you'll want to go into your motherboard and make sure you set the Gen in the PCIe properties in your BIOS to Gen 4. There are problems with 50 series cards, certain cards, specifically Founders Edition cards, when you start going Gen 5 on the board, Gen 4 riser cable to a Gen 5 card, or the Founders Edition cards to another Gen 5 riser within the card. Signaling becomes a problem, so you have to go in and set PCIe Gen 4 on there to have the best chances at compatibility, although it's still not guaranteed to be compatible. There's a lot of testing going on regarding that right now, so there is that. But this would be a neat. Get yourself a small Pelican, you know, get the foam cut out for that, toss it in a Pelican as a carry-on in a PC or for a plane. It'd be an awesome like land rig, or like a, you know, go. Look, that might sound like a really crazy scenario. I know a guy, Hobbs, you know who you are. He travels to every freaking LAN party there is in the world. I don't mean the country, I mean the world. This dude is like freaking, I think he's like Delta Diamond Medallion at this point because of how many times he's gone around the world to like Sweden and Germany and all these other LAN parties and stuff. This is his thing. He loves this stuff, and he always is building the smallest, tightest, highest powered small form factor PCs that he can. So this is like the kind of stuff that's right up his alley. In fact, I think he reached out to me recently asking if he could buy one of my SFF cases I wasn't using, as if he needs another one. Anyway, there you go. If you guys are using the the A4 H2O, I'm really curious as to how your builds turned out. Maybe comment down below what kind of concessions you had to make to be able to make sure it all worked. I think at this point now, from this point on, it'd be a fairly straightforward build. Obviously, cable management would be a definite challenge in here, because as you can see, there are no cable tie downs, there are no routing channels, there's nothing. It's just open in there, and you have to like tie it all up and bundle it all up and make a harness out of it as best you can. So yeah, I think it'd be a fun build, but not today. I don't have a need for this at the moment. I still think this is like the standard to beat for SFF. As you can see, yes, it's a little bigger, it's a little wider, a little longer, and a little taller, but in all the right spaces to allow you to be able to fit bigger components in there. You saw we easily fit a 5090 in this, Founders Edition card anyway. We have the Arctic Freezer 3 AIO in here, which is a much thicker radiator. I had the tubing routed in a pretty standard way, but this one you can actually fit a standard ATX power supply in here if you wanted. I wouldn't recommend that. The cable links would be far too long for everything. But look at this. This thing is fully built and cable managed right now, with the exception of the, you know what, in fact, let me just throw the GPU in there real quick for you, so you can just kind of see. This is a $150 case, by the way. This case was 80 bucks. So just over half the price. Gonna arguably have better airflow because we have intake fans on the bottom, exhaust on, technically I have full intake on this chassis. So these are intake on the AIO as well. I also have an intake on the front. Now some people have challenged with me having all these intakes like this. I could be actually overpowering the AIO. I don't know, haven't gone in and done a lot of thermal testing on this guy yet. But anyway, if I want to go ahead and slot in the Founders Edition card, you can fit that in there no problem. Still see our logo, so we know we overpaid. And Voila. Again, just slightly larger dimensions in every axis makes a whole different experience when it comes to building. So I think if you're really looking for a very complete SFF that is not going to break the bank, I think you owe it to look at the Meshroom D. And if you're not interested, and this isn't an ad, I swear to God, but if you're not interested in SFF, they do also have full towers that are made out of purely mesh. Guess what that one's called? The Meshroom not D.